lover of all things wedding related, and welcome to the Wedding Wisdom Podcast with your hosts, Tonya Hoops and Morgan Powell.
Hi, Morgan. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing, Tonya?
I'm great. All right. So we're in the middle of where we are located. It's getting cold.
It is. I don't know how I didn't love the heat of the summer.
Now you don't want the
but
cold.
Now I don't want the cold either.
We're never happy, are we?
I really am not. No, that's a lie. There's like 2 weeks. They're not consecutive 2 weeks. There's like 14 days in the span of like 3 months that I'm happy with the temperature.
That's why we do weddings in Jamaica and Greece and Italy and the Caribbean, right? Is to get the warmth in the winter.
It's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. But let's talk about winter weddings. Since we are on that subject, let's talk about winter weddings.
Yes.
So the one thing I want to talk about is what are the things that people should consider when they're doing winter weddings? Because I think sometimes what happens is people think, oh, a winter wedding is going to be beautiful, which it is. It's going to be less expensive. Not always true. And so let's talk about like 3 things to really consider when you're considering doing a winter wedding.
Okay.
So the first, let's talk about the temperatures that can happen.
It can get cold.
Yeah, it can, depending on where you are.
Yeah, depending on where you are. So typically if there's snow on the ground, though, that means it's probably less than about 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And it can be colder than that. I always tell, you guys will probably hear this story more than once, but my very first wedding was in January. And one of the tricks, so fun little piece of advice, we took hand warmers and we put the hand warmers in the groom's pockets and they were in my pockets. So we had them everywhere warmed up and we were putting them on the bride's nose to try and keep her nose from turning red. So the hand warmers were a phenomenal trick.
Yep. And we do that a lot. So if we're doing a winter wedding, because we are located in the mountains, while we do weddings everywhere, that's where one of our main offices is we do consider hand warmers for not only the bride and groom, but for the guests, especially if they want an outdoor wedding, which can be so beautiful with the snowy mountains behind you. Sometimes it's got the ski runs behind you,
sometimes
the evergreens.
It's actually snowing and it's like you're in a snow globe, which is just magical.
Yeah, it is. And there's so many fabulous locations, whether it's in Vail or Aspen or Jackson Hole, Wyoming, or Park City, Utah, or
Tahoe.
Tahoe. Yes, absolutely. So many great locations to do a white winter wedding where you can have your ceremony outside, but you do need to consider those temperatures. So how cold is too cold for your guests? That's something to consider.
And that is determinant of your guests. Like there are some people who, I tease that my son wears shorts year round. So he's never cold, it feels like. He's always like, oh, it's totally fine. I can be out here for 30 minutes. And knowing how long your ceremony is as well is also a determining factor. Because if your ceremony is 10, 15 minutes, that's a very different proposition than 30 or 40 minutes.
Yep. And something else to consider is that there are ways to keep guests warm. It can be blankets. It can be those hand warmers we talked about. It can be heaters, but heaters do only go so far. It could be that you actually are enclosed where you still look like you're outside, but you're in a tent with clear windows, right? But those are things that are really important. Also, it's important to know, like maybe we're keeping guests inside until right before the ceremony.
Yes.
And then we're sending them outside. It's important the guests know that that they're going to be outside, that they're going to need those kind of clothes. We did have a New Year's Eve wedding that all the guests were from Florida and it was in the mountains of Utah and it was like 10 degrees when the ceremony went off. And that is very, very cold. And the bride and groom still wanted to be outside.
Yep.
So we made sure that we had the guests inside until the last possible minute, gave them hand warmers as they walked outside. We did have blankets on the chairs for them. So temperature is something that you do definitely need to consider.
It is. And there are a lot of variables to that dependent on your guests, the ages, where they're from, all of those types of things. And so having that in your mind is a great thing.
Yeah. And it's not just the temperature. Wind chill factors can make a big difference too. If you have a 10 degrees with a wind chill of, 20, you're in a whole different world too. So those are things you definitely have to consider.
And that is a whole world. We've got an amazing friend who deals with all of that.
Yes, we do. And we're going to bring him on because he does deal with weather all over the world, which is great because it's something that's fun.
Yeah. So there are professionals that you can hire if you're a little bit unsure of what that weather looks like in the area that you're going to be getting married in.
Yep.
So.
And I would also say your planner will give you some insight too. Like, here's the things to think through, right? This is when 100%. We might want to move into the backup plan. Yeah. But so first thing is temperature. Second thing that we should consider.
Second thing that we should consider is my favorite thing, and it's lighting or sunset. So I oftentimes, it works both ways for me because I often book in the winter when it's dark here at 5 o'clock at night. Yep. And I will have a couple that tells me their ceremony is at 7 o'clock in July. And I'm like, that's not good. And then I have to like think through it and go, oh no, sunset is much later at that time of the year. So thinking through the lighting situation, and that's really helpful specifically with your photo and video team. Mm-hmm. Because if you are looking at doing a candlelight ceremony, which is beautiful.
Yes.
But the talent needed to photograph something so dim and so romantic is very different than the talent needed to photograph something in beautiful afternoon light. Yep.
And these are questions that you need to ask that photographer is like, have you photographed in very dim lighting? Have you photographed in golden hour? And there is a difference between sunset and golden hour. And I think that is very misunderstood. So sometimes people will say, oh, sunset is at 4:30, so I'm going to get married at 4:20. You probably want to get married at 3:50, 4 o'clock, because that's when the golden hour or
that's when the pretty light is.
Yes. But you also have to consider where you are, because if you are like, say, in the mountains, say you're close to the Tetons and you're like kind of down tucked in, those mountain shadows can also make that golden hour go away earlier. So you do have to consider that as well. But lighting is so important. It also helps with warmth.
It does. So I don't know how many of you guys, in fact, Russ and I were just on a walk yesterday and it's a little chilly. I mean, it's not cold here, but it's a little chilly. And I kept being like, could we just walk in the sun instead of the shade? Because it changes even just that. The temperature didn't change, but having that sun on your skin really helps to at least maybe just trick your mind. I don't know.
Yes, it helps a little bit. Well, no, I think the sun definitely has a warmth to it that, you know, if you like stand in the sun versus in the shade, it definitely creates a different warmth factor. So I think that is important. So those are really important things to consider. And a great vendor, whether it's a planner or a photographer, they will help you through those timelines. Yes. So before you set that time on an invitation and send it out, talk to them about when is golden hour, when is the right lighting for your ceremony in the location that you are getting married at. Yeah. That's really important.
And those are the things that your vendors will help you walk through. Also things like if you want to do a first look versus doing photos after your ceremony. How late is your reception going to go? Yeah. Like all of those things play into what time your ceremony needs to start.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked about two things. We've talked about temperature and we've talked about lighting. What are other things that are important in a winter wedding?
Well, I think one of them that we haven't talked about is the weather itself.
Yes.
And how far your guests are having to travel to attend your wedding. So are they coming in from out of state? Is it a destination wedding? Are they local, but they're having to travel an hour? Are they going up canyons? And is there a snowstorm? Is that going to negatively impact? Are they all staying on site? All of those types of things in terms of the weather itself
is really important.
Is really important in how your guests are getting to your wedding.
Yep. And then last is going to be cost. So here's something that I think is definitely a misconception in some areas, not all areas, but some people think, oh, a winter wedding is going to be so much less expensive than a summer wedding. And in some areas, yes, it's absolutely true. So let's take areas like Denver, Colorado, and Salt Lake City, Utah are going to be less expensive more than likely in the winter time for different venues. However, when you're looking at places like Deer Valley or Vel or Jackson Hole or Aspen or Bozeman, Montana, these places are going to be more expensive. And the reason for that is usually your lodging for your guests is more expensive.
Because of ski season.
Yes, because of ski season. And then the other thing is usually the venue is more expensive because those rooms that they're using for the actual venues, let's say that you're at Stein Eriksen Lodge in Deer Valley, they are usually used for other things. And so A, you can't get into them as early, and B, it definitely is a premium because that's the time of year when people want to travel to these areas.
Yes. And I think you can mitigate that a little bit by not traveling during the peak times. So things like avoiding the holidays.
Yep.
So avoiding Thanksgiving, avoiding Christmas, New Year's,
Yes.
those Valentine's Day. Those types of things can help mitigate some of those costs. But you do have to think a lot of those mountain resorts in particular, they make a lot of their money because people are coming in to go skiing or participate in those winter sports.
Yep.
And so you are going to be competing with that. Where summertime, you're competing with the beautiful weather and the like wedding season, if you will. So it's something to definitely keep in mind.
Yep.
Just like any place in the world, even like Jamaica in the wintertime is more expensive. The
more
Caribbean
popular.
is more popular because we're all trying to escape the snowy cold
Yes.
and warm our bodies.
Yep. So really what happens, and that's an interesting kind of forte just slowly into that, is that when it comes to weddings, let's say like an all-inclusive in Jamaica, the cost of the wedding is the same in the winter. However, it's the room rates for your guests. It's the room rates for yourself that go up. And so that's something to consider, just like the same thing in a mountain resort town. And so consider that, where also in a mountain resort town, the venue goes up too. And so that's something to consider. So winter weddings are beautiful and they're great. It's based on the location you're in. Of course, we were mainly talking about mountain resort towns today.
Yes.
Because there's other areas such as Boston or, New York City where it's a whole different story for winter weddings.
Definitely.
Yep, but still beautiful.
And I will say, like, even though these are the four things that we would encourage you guys to think about, don't let that scare you from not having a winter wedding.
Oh no, they're gorgeous.
Because they are stunning. And if you guys can handle it and brave the cold and the price point is right, they will create such amazing memories.
Yes, for a lifetime. With those beautiful snow in the background.
Yes.
So we hope that this information was really helpful for you, especially if you're considering navigating a winter wedding. If you have more questions or want to have some guidance with any of these questions, you can also always get our templates, which are our wedding wisdom templates, which help you plan your whole wedding. And some of these questions are in there to ask your photographer, to ask a venue, pricing, all of that fun stuff. Yep. So we hope you have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Wedding Wisdom Podcast with your hosts, Tonya Hoops and Morgan Powell. To keep up to date with the latest episodes, like, subscribe, and follow at Wedding Wisdom Blog on all social media platforms. To submit content, please email weddingwisdomblog@gmail.com.